kurz gesagt, hat ein Video hochgeladen. Das müssen wir uns anschauen. Wir haben das so oft schon auf dem Channel hier drüber gesprochen. Und zwar, gibt es verlorene, antike Alien-Zivilisationen? Und das ist ein Thema, ihr wisst, da brenne ich für. Ich bin sehr gespannt auf das Video. Ich habe es mir extra für euch aufbewahrt. Let's go!
When we think about alien civilizations, we tend to look into the vastness of space, to faraway planets. But there is another incredibly vast dimension that we might be giving too little thought to. Time.
Yes, also quasi gab es vielleicht schon weit entwickelte Zivilisationen vor uns hier auf der Erde. Maybe.
Could it be
Just
that over
maybe.
the last hundreds of millions of years, other
Just maybe.
civilizations existed on Earth?
Das ist so eine interessante Idee, finde ich. Wir haben ja schon so oft darüber gequatscht. Ich bin sehr gespannt auf das Video,
technological
wirklich.
species that rose and died out. And that
Weil, wenn man überlegt, wie schnell Sachen auch wieder zerfallen einfach. Also von unserer Zivilisation, keine Ahnung, wir würden jetzt aussterben, dann werden da nach weiß nicht, einer Million Jahre, was im Lebensalter der Erde gesehen nichts ist, halt nichts mehr übrig so. Das ist halt insane.
they or their artifacts are buried beneath our feet. What does science have to
so eine
say about
interessante
this,
Idee.
and what are the implications for us?
Let's go.
Life on Earth has existed for 4 billion years, mostly as single-celled organisms.
Und man hört diese Zahl jetzt einfach so, 4 Milliarden Jahre. Das ist so lang, das kann man sich gar nicht vorstellen. Ihr müsst überlegen, also allein so, wenn man jetzt Pyramiden nimmt, das sind 4.000, 5.000 Jahre nur. Also Milliarden Jahre ist so ein ganz insaner Zeitraum.
Until some 540 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion heralded the age of animals. A huge time window for our indigenous aliens.
Yes.
Where would we look for them, and what could we hope to find?
Aliens sind auch eher in Anführungszeichen, weil Aliens, also auf der Erde sind es ja keine Aliens so gesehen, weil die sind ja auf der Erde gewesen, aber... Ja,
Sadly, we have only one civilization to look at, ourselves. Anatomically modern.
Das ist immer so schwieriger auch, wenn man jetzt auf Leben von anderen Planeten sucht und so. Wir haben nur eine Referenz, und zwar unsere eigene Entwicklung hier. Deswegen, aber das heißt ja nicht, dass Zivilisation oder Leben immer so entstehen muss wie jetzt bei uns.
Humans emerged around 300,000 years ago and probably lived in small groups of hunter-gatherers, slowly spreading around the world. Progress was slow and our lifestyle didn't change much, although there may have been local bursts of complexity. Until about 10,000 years ago, when the agricultural revolution
Und 10.000 Jahre ist, wenn man sich das mal auf das ganze oder Jahrmillionen Zeitskala-Ding ansieht, halt nix. 10.000 Jahre ist so.
changed our lifestyle forever, enabling massive population growth and technological
Das war wieder so schön animiert, das Video. Das muss ich bei jedem Video kurz admiren.
progress. Rather than just animals with culture and tools that would have been invisible from space, we changed the face of the planet, cleared forests and constructed cities and temples
Manche Sachen auch eher schlechte
for our
Veränderungen.
gods at breathtaking speeds and scales. Until about 300 years ago, we became an industrial species, and yet
300 Jahre ist auch wieder so
again
wenig
our
Zeit
numbers grew
eigentlich, ey.
exponentially, as did our impact on the
So
planet.
krass.
We could say that our 300,000-year-long history has 3 phases. We were hunter-gatherers for 97%, farmers for 2.9%, and industrialists.
Guck mal, das ist unsere aktuelle letzten paar hundert Jahre. Und guck mal, wie weit das mit den Menschen eigentlich zurückgeht. Und selbst das ist nur ein ganz kleiner Zeitabschnitt
For
eigentlich nur.
0.1%.
Ich finde, das ist immer so schwierig in Perspektive zu setzen. Also ich habe damit selbst auch manchmal Schwierigkeiten, weil das sind Zeitspannen, die kann das menschliche Gehirn irgendwie schwierig auffassen. So.
Of our history. And yet, we are super new on Earth. On
Yes.
geological timescales, even the sturdiest things lose their durability. The oldest large-scale surface is the Negev Desert, a meager 1.8 million years old. Everything older has been crushed to dust or turned over, and it's either below the ground or covered by ice or ocean.
Und auch diese 1,8 Millionen Jahre, ich wiederhole mich, ihr checkt den Punkt. Also es ist gar nicht so unwahrscheinlich, dass hier vielleicht vorher mal komplexes Leben war und wir einfach nichts davon mehr finden. Weil die Erde gibt schon verdammt lange so.
They are only a few centimeters thick in a few million years. If there were aliens before us and they too went through these 3 phases, what would remain of them? What can we learn about indigenous aliens by looking at ourselves? Hunter-gatherer aliens. We actually know that in the last few million years there were hunter-gatherer aliens. Our ancestors like Homo erectus and cousins like the Neanderthals or Denisovans, and probably many more that we haven't found yet or are lost to time forever. They left fragments of their bodies, of weapons and tools, and even art. Considering how long they existed and how little remains of them, although they lived not that far from our present, it's easy to think there have been others.
Genau das ist das Ding. Genau das ist das
Intelligent
Ding.
animals like us that could talk and use tools and fire, that had culture and art. For the last 2 million years, most hominins lived as hunter-gatherers. So if these aliens never moved up higher on the tech tree, hundreds of different species and cultures could have existed without leaving any traces.
Gerade weil diese Kulturen, die, sage ich mal, nur Hunter and Gatherers sind, halt wenige Sachen hinterlassen. Das heißt, die, wenn die halt aussterben, dann wird man ziemlich schnell nichts mehr davon merken, weil die halt nichts, sag ich mal, so Monumentales erschaffen haben wie riesige Städte oder so.
Their artifacts lost to biological and then geological processes. At worst, they would leave absolutely nothing to be found after thousands of years. But what about fossils? We talked about how unlikely the process of fossilization is in more detail in our dinosaur video. But in a nutshell, per 100,000 years of Earth's history, we only get a handful of good fossils. So we might easily just miss fossils of such people, but even if we had any, we wouldn't necessarily be able to identify them as hunter-gatherers. Agricultural and empire aliens. Looking at humans again, agricultural societies left much more to be dug up and found because they used more sophisticated tools made
Und weil sie wirklich Sachen gebaut haben. Ich glaube, das heißt also so, Sachen bauen ist halt so ein wichtiger Punkt auch.
from sturdier materials and had to feed millions, leaving many more artifacts. Farming allowed them to specialize and develop tech from writing to navigation, architecture and government.
Auch Informationen aufschreiben und weitergeben ist so ein fundamentaler Skill. Stellt euch vor, mit jeder Generation wird immer das Wissen verloren gehen. Dann hätten wir uns ja niemals so weit entwickelt. Das ist auch so eine Kleinigkeit, über die man einfach oft nicht nachdenkt. Aber die Frage mit den Dinosauriern, da denke ich gerade drüber nach. Also ich meine, wir haben ja vor 65 Millionen Jahren noch Fossilien von Dinos. Also müssten wir doch eigentlich theoretisch irgendwo Fossilien haben von denen, oder nicht? Habe ich da was falsch
of
verstanden?
years, city-states became kingdoms and empires, some existing for millennia before they fell. Many of the buildings or monuments they constructed are still around, and traces of them will exist for a few thousand more years. Some only as outlines in the ground, but still recognizable to future archaeologists. The pyramids are piles of limestone so massive that they will probably be around for hundreds of thousands of years.
Das ist so krass, dass so die übel antiken Sachen wahrscheinlich die sind, die wieder am längsten überdauern.
And because of the greater numbers of humans that lived during our farm and empire period, we can expect way more fossils and artifacts to be detectable, maybe for a few million years before they vanish. So we can say with confidence that no such indigenous alien civilization existed in the last few million years, because otherwise we would have found something that they left. This still leaves a window of hundreds of millions of years, back to the emergence
Jo, ist immer so ein kleiner...
of complex
Mann,
life
ey.
where we would
Wie wenig wir eigentlich
be able
wissen,
to
ne?
tell.
Wie wenig wir eigentlich wissen.
If there were alien pre-industrial societies and empires on the level of the ancient Romans or Chinese, they would have likely disappeared without a trace. Their tools, even advanced metals, would have rotted away. If they dug up canals, cleared forests, and built cities, their traces would be very hard to distinguish from nature. Maybe there was once an empire of cephalopods occupying impressive cities
Einfach
in
Star Wars.
swamps and lakes made from wood and stone. Their engineers flooding land to build wet cities, their poets reciting poems in a language of colors. Maybe they never industrialized. Maybe their society was too stable or not inventive enough, or they never got a chance. A single event like an asteroid, an epidemic, or an ice age could just have deleted their civilization, ground up their temples as their soft bodies rotted away.
Das ist so eine krasse Vorstellung, finde ich. Und das setzt auch so unsere eigene Existenz in so eine Perspektive einfach.
Sadly, we don't have the tiniest amount of evidence for any such civilization. After a few million years at best, their achievements would have dissolved into nothing. Industrial indigenous aliens. What about industrial civilizations like humanity today? Imagine humans died out suddenly through a pandemic or cosmic rays, or something like that, what would remain? Our impact on the planet is orders of magnitude greater than that of our ancestors. The fossil record will show a great extinction of wildlife and an explosion of fossils from human-associated animals like rats, cows, pigs, and chickens. Like the structures of our ancestors, skyscrapers and streets and hard drives will basically crumble into nothingness in a few millennia.
Die Sachen sind halt einfach zu wartungsintensiv. Unsere ganze heutige Struktur ist so wartungsintensiv, wenn du die halt einfach ein paar Jahrzehnte nicht mehr betreust, dann zerfallen die halt einfach.
But because there were so many humans everywhere, for a few million years after our sudden end, there would be clear hints of our existence. The byproducts of our
Das ist sehr kreativ
industrial
animiert.
lifestyle might actually give us away for some hundreds of millions of years. We use massive amounts of artificial fertilizer which redirects Earth's flow of nitrogen that is being deposited in the soil. Mining metals and rare earth elements leaves long-term scars and depletes natural resources. We saturate our oceans with plastics that find their way to the ocean floor and may persist for hundreds of millions of years. There are radioactive elements and their decay, unnatural accumulations of elements that don't exist outside labs or weapons. And of
Also so weit waren dann wahrscheinlich Zivilisationen vor uns, wenn sie existiert haben, nicht weit, dann hätten wir auf jeden Fall Sachen
course,
gefunden,
in
würde
our
ich
short
sagen.
industrial history, we have changed the proportion of CO2 in the air by burning massive amounts of fossil fuels, increasing the acidity of the oceans, and so on. We may already have left a mark in the geological record. So far, we have found no traces of an industrial alien civilization. No layers of weird chemicals or displaced elements. No radioactive layer to indicate that once great nations waged nuclear war. We do see mass extinctions and massive shifts in the fossil records, but no evidence that they did not occur naturally. And ironically, we've hit
Also wie gruselig wäre es, wenn man irgendwie sowas finden würde, dass halt in der Antike einfach so ein Atomkrieg geführt worden wäre. Das wäre so scary,
upon an
Alter.
interesting problem here. If industrial societies stress the ecosystem enough to cause their own extinction, they won't be around that long. But if they become sustainable, their imprint on the geological record may be tiny. If past industrial civilizations were sustainable before they died out, we may have little to no chance of ever knowing about them. In any case, over hundreds of millions of years, these signatures may become very subtle and get overlooked or interpreted as natural. Even if an industrialized alien society existed 200 million years
Trotzdem finde ich die Gedanken so geil.
ago and lasted for 100,000
Trotzdem ist der
years,
Gedanke so
300
spannend,
times
ey.
longer than industrial humanity, it still might be easy to miss it in the geological record. In any case, all of this is speculation. In the end, we shouldn't use our imagination to trick ourselves into thinking we know anything about our blind spots. Just assuming a thing happened because we don't have evidence against it is a trap we should avoid. So, for now, if we look at the vastness of time, it seems as devoid of aliens as the vastness of space. Maybe
Keines
we are alone
Also so gerade antike Aliens auf unserer eigenen Erde finde ich hyper interessant.
in
Fast noch
this
interessanter als
universe
von einem anderen
and
Planeten
always
irgendwie,
were.
actually, weil das mehr
Maybe
Rückschlüsse auf
we'll
uns
find
gibt.
traces of others eventually, we don't know. But there is one important takeaway. The continuation of our civilization is not guaranteed. And if we're not careful, we may disappear forever. Let's hope that in a few million years, there isn't another civilization studying our layer in the fossil record.
Hoffentlich nicht. Hoffentlich nicht. Sehr, sehr interessant. Also, ich bin, wie ihr schon wisst, super, ich beschäftige mich sehr, sehr gerne damit, so mit auch so, müssen nicht unbedingt Aliens sein, aber auch so mit antiken, verlorenen Zivilisationen, sowas wie Atlantis, haben wir schon oft drüber gesprochen, oder ich sag mal, vorgeschrittene Kulturen, die vielleicht, von denen wir vielleicht noch nicht wissen, aber ich fand es mal interessant, auch gerade diesen Fossilien-Gedanken mit reinzubringen, weil da habe ich noch nicht so drüber nachgedacht.